welcome to Newfoundland and Labrador Studies 2205. This is Unit 3, The Country Grows, Section 4, Lesson 12, on the National Convention. I'm Miss Fleming, your instructor for this course, so let's get this video started. The agreement reached for Commission of Government was for the Commission to be in place until Newfoundland and Labrador could be self-sufficient. It then continued for 15 years, which was longer than originally intentioned, but this was partially thanks to the Second World War. Newfoundland, British, and Canadian officials recognized that the Commission would end when the war was over. The question was, what would be the next steps? It was realized that a new path had to be forged. The British government began to consider the question in 1942. British officials were pessimistic that Newfoundland would remain self-sufficient past the end of World War II. It seemed that there was a pattern, just the same as during World War I, where there was a lot of economic prosperity, that economic prosperity could possibly then go away post-war. The Dominion Office thought that Newfoundland should join Canada and benefit from the country's more stable economy. The war had also shown Canada that Newfoundland and Labrador was important and needed to be protected. And Canadian officials were also wary of the interests of the United States. Like, remember in our lesson on the Second World War, they feared that the American government would turn Newfoundland and Labrador into another Alaska. So citizens of Newfoundland and Labrador had to be prepared. In 1943, 3 British members of Parliament visited Newfoundland and Labrador to determine which form of government Newfoundlanders and Labradorians favored. They determined there was a fair amount of uncertainty and widespread unease about responsible government. No form of elected government had existed since 1934, and citizens were no longer accustomed to party politics. They were kind of apathetic, it seemed. For citizens to make an informed decision, they had to be equipped with the correct information. So, British Prime Minister Clement Attlee announced that the public would elect delegates to a national convention. The mandate was to investigate Newfoundland's economic, social, and political status to recommend which forms of government would be on a referendum ballot. So, on June 21st, 1946, voters in Newfoundland and Labrador elected 45 members from 38 districts to the National Convention. This was the first general election since 1932, and the first where Labrador had a voice. Voter turnout was low, except for in St. John's, where the turnout was about 60%. But really, 60% isn't that much higher than only half the St. John's population. About half the delegates were businessmen or merchants. The others included journalists, teachers, union leaders, lawyers, and clergy. And they met for the first time on September 11, 1946, and established 10 committees to examine aspects of the economy and society. Their reports then would be brought forth to the convention for discussion and adoption. The Finance Committee was to then write a report on the financial situation and the country's outlook. So now let's talk about the Ottawa and London delegations. It was assumed that discussion on forms of government would not occur until after the committee work was finished. But this was disrupted when Joseph R. Smallwood, who was a businessman on part of the convention, suggested the convention send a delegation to Ottawa to discuss terms of union with Canada. This sparked a rigorous debate that split the delegates into pro- and anti-Confederate lines. Impartiality seemed impossible at this point, so pro-Confederate delegates visited Ottawa, and anti-Confederate delegates visited London to discuss terms. The London delegation left Newfoundland on April 25, 1947, but returned unhappy as the British made it clear that if responsible government were reinstated, Newfoundland would receive no support whatsoever from Great Britain. With this in mind, Peter Cashin, who was an active anti-Confederate position, gave an emotional speech claiming a conspiracy existed to sell this country to the Dominion of Canada. The Ottawa delegation travelled to Ontario on June 19, 1947, with the intention to return in a month. But the convention's chairman, and Joseph Smallwood, had every intention of staying until a plausible agreement was reached. Let's talk about the end result. All members agreed that both Commission of Government and Responsible Government should be on the ballot. Smallwood then moved that Confederation with Canada should be a third option, which erupted in an emotional debate lasting until 5:30 the following morning. The motion was defeated 26-16, but the British government overruled the convention and put Confederation with Canada on the ballot anyway. Considering all debates were broadcast over the radio, citizens could listen to everything being discussed, including that long emotional debate until 5:30 in the morning. These debates were also being reported on by newspapers, so between radio and newspapers, people were able to make a more informed decision and become more politically informed. The National Convention served its purpose, but it also electrified political engagement, providing Newfoundlanders and Labradorians with a political education. So now it's time to review. I'm going to ask you to please complete the activities in Brightspace, and I hope you have a great day.